You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
This is Rod Mahood, your in-game voice of the Niagara IceDogs, and you're listening to the Dog Pound Podcast on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your podcast source for all game analysis, team interviews, and up-to-date news regarding the Niagara IceDogs.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another installment of the Dog Pound Podcast right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, the official podcast of your Niagara IceDogs. Find us on social media for updates and giveaways by following the podcast on Twitter at Dog Pound Podcast. As well, you can follow the network itself at Armchair GM Pod and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. You can find us on demand wherever you're getting your podcasts at in audio form on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Wherever you're getting your podcasts at, we are available for you guys on demand in audio form. And obviously, if you guys are watching the YouTube video version of the podcast, make sure you're hitting that like button, smashing subscribe, and smashing that bell icon for all updates on when our episodes get released on our YouTube channel. So go give us some love over there. Lastly, you can check out our website, armchairgmsports.com. And as well, you can find us on the IceDogs website, niagaraicedogs.net, for all things regarding the network. You can navigate all the way through there right on the Niagara IceDogs official website. As always, I'm your host of the Dog Pound Podcast. My name is Brandon Caputo. You can follow me on Twitter right underneath there at Caputs13_AGM. And you can follow my co-host to my left. He is Kyle Aikett at JustKyle51. Kyle, again, as the thumbnail says on the episode this week, rough week for the IceDogs after a 2-0-1 start in week 1.
Yep. Say that again. Rough indeed. It was rough. Yeah, it was definitely not a good 3-game stretch. Probably not the greatest 3-game stretch, as Brandon just casually shameless plugs the water bottle that we have now with our logo on it on the YouTube side here. But yeah, after a great weekend in Michigan with the Michigan sweep, you know, there's a lot of expectations going to these 3 games. I was hoping at least 2 out of 3 wins, but Lady Luck wasn't on our side, and the Dogs fell into some dog days early on here in this.
Yeah, it was not good. Not the greatest start, and you know, it's again, they're not going to go 68-0.
Yeah,
that
anyone's expecting 68-0. I mean, people in London don't even expect their team to go 68-0, and they're probably going to be one of the top teams here in the in the East Division at least, or sorry, the OHL. So like I don't understand some of the criticism here that this team gets. People are just so over the top with it. It drives me nuts.
And again, guys, we're not going to sit here and say it was all great. You know, guys, they had a great week. And you know what? We might as well put on, Kyle.
Oh, hang on.
Our IceDogs rose-colored glasses.
The IceDogs never, ever do anything wrong. You know, we're going to come out here. We're going to say, you know what? They lost the 3 games, but they did good. You know, they had good spirits about them, and you know, they were passing the puck. That's a good positive. We should just focus on that. Yeah, they passed the puck. Yeah, you know what? Who cares that they lost? Let's talk about how they passed the puck. Oh, so good. You know, I'm not gonna come out here and talk negatively about this team. No, absolutely not. We are not these people. Okay, we're not gonna come out here. We have the respect of the team. But when stuff gets bad, and when stuff is bad, we're going to talk about it here on the show. We're not going to sit here and pretend to be behind a paywall, because we're not. We're just the official podcast of the Dogs. We're not behind no paywall. We're not getting paid to say stuff here. No, these are our genuine feelings. These are our genuine opinions of this team, regardless of what others may say about our show. This is our opinions and our truthful opinions. Literally, what me and Brandon talk about in the booth, up in the press box, is literally what we say on the show. Word for word. I kid you not. I'll put a mic on me up there, and I'll let you guys listen. So
again, just because we talk we try to talk constructively about the team. We're not just going to go out here and bury these kids, because at the end of the day, these are still kids. They're not NHL players. You know,
They're 17,
again,
16.
exactly.
Like,
so
people are expecting them to be like NHL pros right now. Jesus.
yeah, we can talk about them in a certain way, but at the same time, guys, let's pump the brakes a little bit and understand what this team is. I know people invest a lot of money and time into this team like it is an NHL team, and I appreciate the passion of this fan base wanting the team to be good, but at the same time, there's nothing that we can do that is to talk about them in such a way that is just going to bury the team, and that's not going to help anybody out. And again, you know, the coaching staff doesn't want us to and the management staff, they don't want us to just come on here and say everything's great. You know, they want us to make sure that we're talking objectively, or else, you know, we wouldn't have any credibility as media members for the team either. And again, we'd just be raising the pom-poms.
I would hate that.
It great.
I'm sorry.
know?
If I was a GM and, you know, we had an official podcast, and just say I was GM of the team. If I knew a podcast was going out there and we labeled them as our official podcast and they were just, you know, it's basically like lying. If they're just going out there and saying like, oh, it's all sunshine and rainbows, even though they lose like 3 straight because they were, you know, horrible, I wouldn't like that. I'm like, well, why are you guys going out there and saying it's all sunshine and rainbows? We had a horrible last 3 games and we could do better. Plain and simple. That's what we're going to talk about today. We could do a lot better than what we've seen in those 3 games.
But again,
we're not going to come out here and just say, oh, it's okay. You know, they're just kids. It's all right, Brandon.
But we're also not do that. But we're also not going to act like the sky's falling, because as we'll Coach
Which is not shocker
in the post game. You know, everybody's going to lose games. Nobody's going 68-0. So again, they had a great week 1. They had a rough patch week 2. But again, we are not going to come out here and just, you know, be one way or the other. We're going to, you know, call it right down the middle like it is, you know, in respect to the team, but in respect to the fan base as well. And we understand, you know, we have to talk about some things that went bad this week, but we're going to always talk about it in a constructive manner, because that's what we do on this show. And we're not just going to be the cheerleaders for the team or come out with rose-colored glasses, as some people might think. You know, that's not who we are, and that's not what we want this show to be. So, and the players will be the first ones to tell you that, you know, it wasn't a good week either. So we wanted to get that quickly out of the way for you guys. A little bit of joking there on the video side if you saw the glasses and that. But again, we'll get back to the show and, you know, look at this team objectively, because obviously the last 3 games haven't been great, but there were some positives to take away from this. And obviously we've got some trades to talk about. We'll talk about those. We've got a special interview that I did with the Oshawa Generals play-by-play voice, Jack Moore, talking about some former IceDogs that are doing well now with the Oshawa Generals. And then we'll kind of just wrap up, talk about the new, the new fan club, and then going into the looking towards the game against the Flint Firebirds on Saturday night. A very light schedule for the IceDogs before they have a couple of bigger weeks coming up in the schedule. So, with that said, Kyle, let's go into just your general thoughts on the 3 games. I'll put the scores up on the screen for the video version. If you guys are listening in audio, you guys can pull them up. So the IceDogs, you know, getting those first 3 games, they pick up 5 out of 6 points, and you know everybody's thinking it's going to be great, but again, they weren't going 67-0-1. So I don't know what people expected. Yeah, you don't want them to have 3 losses and giving up 16 goals in those 3 games and only scoring 7. But, you know, they lose to Barrie on the Thursday night. They lose to Oshawa and Guelph back-to-back on Friday, Saturday. Guelph is a very good team, projected to be one of the best in all of the CHL, not just the OHL. Kyle, just general thoughts on the 3 games and how we kind of move forward here.
So I'll start with the Barrie game. The Barrie game, and this we were watching from home. We didn't go on the trip with the team to Barrie, but watching that game, I remember texting you and even talking to you at the rink the next day about it. I was like, I couldn't tell in that game because I and along with other fans out there, I'm sure, and the team were riding the momentum from the past weekend, right? It was a feel-good weekend. You swept the 2 Michigan teams. You know, a really good start to the season, you know, so you're going to Barrie hoping for a 3rd win here, the 3rd win on the road. It's just when I was watching the game, and again, this goes back to what I was just saying, I just texted you and going, I can't tell if we're just off or Barry's really good. Like it was a mix of both. Like I couldn't, and as the game went on, it kind of felt like Barry was just they kind of outplayed the Ice Dogs eventually. The Ice Dogs then started getting into bad penalty trouble. The third period is what killed the Ice Dogs in the Barry game. They took about, oh God, I'm counting here the penalties. They took about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, 6 or 7 penalties in the third period, which was not good. One of them was a game misconduct to Rodwin Denizio, who had an abuse of an official penalty, which I was so confused about because I'm watching it, I'm going, I didn't see like anything. And all of a sudden he's off the ice and the commentator goes, oh yeah, he's Denizio is off the ice for abuse of an official. Interesting. Pano had really bad luck too with penalties in that game. He had 2 straight high sticking calls, like 2 minutes apart. So it was unfortunate for him. But I think that's what it ultimately was. Barry just caught the Ice Dogs off guard. I don't know if they were just tired from the road trip or whatnot, and just weren't ready for Barry. But Barry caught them off guard and really, kind of took advantage of the third period, right? They didn't get any third period power play goals, but the second period was a heavily goal scored. Like they had 4 goals in the second period to the Ice Dogs too. Like it was a very high scoring second period, and in the end, it didn't help the Ice Dogs with Barry getting the 1 goal in the first period. They held on and won 5-2. But again, the penalties in the third period, what killed the Ice Dogs from, getting any sort of momentum going, any kind of comeback. So that's what ultimately killed them in that first game. After that, I was like, okay, so you know what? We can put that game behind us. That was just one of those rough games you just throw back, put in the back of your mind, you move on from, right?
Yeah,
just one of those games.
Give credit to Marty Williamson, the former Ice Dogs coach. He obviously has Barry in a good spot, even without Brant Clark and Ethan Cardwell in the lineup. Tip your cap to them.
Right,
they played a good game.
Right. And I believe it was their goalie played pretty well. I think he got the first star of the game. I'm almost certain. But moving on to the Oshawa game, that was the next day. So this was the home opener for the Ice Dogs, I believe, right? This was the home opener?
No, Thursday was the previous.
Oh, the Thursday for, okay. So this was the next home game. God. And this was an interesting game. So this was an Oshawa team coming in with a couple of former Ice Dogs and Cam Butler and recently Dylan Rubrick. So
and even Leighton Moore too.
Even Leighton Moore you can count as well. Yeah, he's become their captain now. Yeah. But there was a lot riding on this game, right? This was on paper, it looked like a really decently built Oshawa team. I thought it was going to be a really, really even matchup. Ended up being if I can say, a wash of a game because it was all Oshawa from puck drop. This whole entire game was all Oshawa. They absolutely dominated the Ice Dogs, I thought, throughout the game. I know the shots were pretty close, but the first period was the period that kind of set the whole game. They outshot the Ice Dogs 16-4. 16-4 in the first period. Let that sit for a while. 16 shots to our 4 in the entire first period. And the Oshawa Generals scored 3 goals in that first period. And that basically killed the rest of the game. There really was, like, all the momentum from what I seen got sucked out of the team from that first period. And we just had to watch and watch as Oshawa kicked us while we were down and end up winning 6-3. We took less penalties in this one, which I was okay with, right? There's a few penalties that could have been avoided, but we only took 3 to Oshawa's, I believe they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 penalties. So, we didn't score on any of those power plays though, which kind of was upsetting. But again, like I said, that whole first period kind of just sucked the life out of the team, and it was hard to watch. It was extremely hard to watch. Again, I know like the whole rose-colored glasses thing. If I could take a positive though from a loss, which is you're allowed to take. Hang on, for anyone that wants to criticize, you can take a positive from a loss. I don't know if that's groundbreaking, but you can take a positive from a loss. I actually had a few. I actually had 2. 1, Kevin He looks amazing. That kid, if he continues to develop the way he's developing now into a better player, he's going to be an absolute star for this team, and he'll be a high draft pick if he continues to develop in that way. 2, I thought Flores still had a really good game. I know he let in 6 goals, but I thought he still had a really good game. He saw 34 to 40 shots. I still think he looks good and looks promising in the net, so I took that away as well from that game. But good on Oshawa for, again, taking advantage of an Ice Dog team that was on their heels again. As soon as that first period was over, the Ice Dogs play on their heels for the rest of the game.
And you see this when guys go back to playing their old team. It just looked like Cam Butler and Dylan Rubrick got up to play this game, and
that line was deadly. Those two and Callum Ritchie were aligned together. I'm like, oh, and they look like they gelled so well. And you know what? That happens. It's not just the OHL. That happens in the NHL, right? A change of scenery can do a lot for a player. And sure enough, it looked like these 3 built a lot of, some great chemistry together. That's great. Good for them.
And
it sucks for us because that's against us, but good for them.
And especially Callum Ritchie's projected right now as a fringe top 10 pick in the NHL draft. So got to tip your cap to him. He's dangerous anytime he touches the puck. So, yeah, there's really nothing else to say about that. I agree that Flores, had a decent game. Kind of got left out to dry in a few of those goals, and it just wasn't the Ice Dogs' night. Copeland scored in his night back in the lineup, and Panofemis was back. But we'll get to kind of the positives after. But you're right, you can take positives from a loss, without having the rose-colored glasses on. But again, Oshawa game was not good on Friday night. We were hoping for a better effort on Saturday, which was going to be tougher because, like I mentioned in the open, Guelph is a very, very good team, and they showed it on the ice on Saturday.
This was I knew going into this game it was going to be a tough game, right? What I will say is, though, this is, we did a good job staying out of the box the Friday game. Not so much the Saturday game. We took about, I think it was 7 or 8 penalties that game. And, Guelph made us pay for it. I think they scored on 3 of those power plays. So 3 out of the 5 goals were on the power play for the Guelph Storm. I believe there was even it was like the first period. I think there was, I think we were like shorthanded for like the first half of the first period. I'm like, this is just This is like killing them, or like, it was either the first or the second half. I'm like, this is just draining them, right? Like it's tough to watch. But like watching Guelph though, they're a solid team. I think that projection was correct in the beginning of the year. Watching them and how they flow, how they move the puck up the ice, how they entered in the neutral, they were trapping the Ice Dogs a shit ton this game. Sorry, my language, but a lot this game. They were trapping them in. The Ice Dogs could barely get into the zone. I think we noticed that a bunch of times, even with our pal Bill from BSPN. Shouts to him. We noticed that a lot. Like the Guelph Storm literally had the blue line stand and barely let the Ice Dogs in at all. And this was like for the rest of it happened near like the second half of the second period, like the rest of the game. They just shut down the Ice Dogs. As soon as they got that lead, Guelph went in the shutdown mode. They still let their offensive guys go out and score, which they did. They scored, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 unanswered goals. The Ice Dogs ended up opening the scoring, but then Guelph scored 5 unanswered goals after that.
Even on the power play, they couldn't get in the zone. It seemed like they couldn't really formulate an offensive zone game plan because, Guelph had obviously scouted them very well, and that's a growing pain for the Ice Dogs. That's, they're going to have to learn to adjust on the fly a little bit, and you got to just tip your cap to a Guelph team that, like you mentioned, just obviously looks like they're going to be a lethal team this year to watch out for. Yeah,
and Rosenzweig, I thought, played really good. Regardless of the loss, that he shot 40 of 45 shots, which is a lot for a goalie. So you can't even look to the goalie as a blame factor here. They scored both goals on the power play, which is, I guess okay for the Ice Dogs, right? They had 3 power plays in that game. They scored 2 out of the 3, which is, again, that's a small takeaway you can take out of a loss. That's good to look at, right? That was one of the big things last year in last year's team was they couldn't score at all on the power play. It's going to be an interesting, rest of the season, how this team goes along, because, I think a big thing is that you need to build like these teams that are beating the Ice Dogs. They have a team that have good flow out of neutral zone and stuff. And that one big key factor for that is chemistry. You know, it is tough to build a team with chemistry when there's so many trades, right? There's people going in and out of the lineup, coaches having to make new lines because of players leaving, right? You got to think, we lost Bryce Cook. We lost now Matthew Pappas.
Rubric.
We lost Dylan Rubric. So those 3 players shook up the lineups, right? The coaches had to build new lines and have to have those players build new chemistry. And there's really not much time to do that. Your training camp's only so long. And these 3 players were in training camp and now they're not. So,
yeah.
It's tough. So like, I think people just need to be a little bit patient. I know there's not a lot of time to build chemistry, but it's only the beginning of the season. If this was like at the trade deadline, I'd say maybe this time for, it's cause for concern. This is not the trade deadline.
It's 6
This
games.
is literally 6 games into this. We have played 5 games. We've played 5 games.
6.
6. People know we have 68.
60.
There's 62 games left, guys. 62. This isn't the end of the world. Yeah, it's weird. And I understand people we're just overly frustrated from the 3 games, and then we started trading more players. That probably added to it. But you know what? It happens. I just hate the fact that people act like the IceDogs are the only team making trades. Yeah, they made a lot of trades, but it's the fact that they act like they're the only team that's making trades out there. I just saw like 3 OHL teams make trades today, and no one bats an eye.
Yeah, the Hamilton traded their starting goaltender Marco Constantini.
And was like, "Oh, it's a good trade." like, and as soon as Niagara trades one, oh, here we go, Niagara trading another player.
And Hamilton just got an affiliation with a team in a lesser league. Nobody batted an eye on that either.
Oh, but the IceDogs get Brantford. It's like, oh, the team's moving. Watch out.
And again, I understand that the fan base is, fatigued from the last couple of years, but you have to give these guys a chance. It's not the old administration here. It's 6 games into the regular season. There's 62 games left.
6 games.
And again,
guys,
yes.
6.
Yes, it was a bad week. We're not going to sit here and say it wasn't.
Were you guys just not present last year? We had bad weeks every week. You guys act like we came from winning the OHL Cup to this.
Yeah.
People just need to calm down. And I don't care. I sent that tweet out, and to me, it was just like, IceDogs breathe, and then it's like, oh, riot. It's just, guys, let's just calm it down. It's like watching your NHL team. Yeah, like, I'm a Leaf fan. We lost the first game of the season yesterday to Montreal of all teams. Montreal. But guess what? There's more games. There's 81 more games.
Yep. I think
playoffs don't start tomorrow.
I think we've said all we can say about that. We're gonna get to Coach Daniel Fitzgerald's quick post game after the Oshawa game, and then we'll get into the Twitter polls before we hit our break. So here's Head Coach of the Niagara IceDogs, Daniel Fitzgerald, following the loss to the Oshawa Generals. Here on the post game with IceDogs head coach Daniel Fitzgerald after the 6-3 loss to the Oshawa Generals. Coach, obviously not the result you guys want tonight. Was there something that Oshawa was really doing to limit you guys' ability to enter the zone, or do you think that you guys just didn't have your A game tonight?
We knew it was going to be a battle of attrition, and we didn't have our best by any means, and we started late. We didn't feel like we showed up ready to play. It wasn't our best, but we saw some things, a little glimmer of hope at different times. We'll be okay.
And can you talk about just the penalties that continue to kind of add up here and the amount of penalties and the amount of power plays that the other teams are getting? And then especially a team like this with somebody like Callum Ritchie, that's something that is going to be able to that's not going to help you guys any, taking penalties against teams like this.
Yeah, no, we knew that their power play is deadly. So we had to stay out of the box, but best way to stay out of the box is to continue to play with pace, and it's when you're not chasing the game, you don't have to take penalties, and it's the same the other way. When we play with pace, we force teams to take penalties on us, and we need to do a better job of maintaining our pace, keeping it up, being physical, staying on the south side of guys. So we'll clean that up.
And after a 2-0-1 start, a couple of losses here, what do you tell the guys in the room to kind of keep their morale up, because it's a long season and, you know, there's going to be peaks and valleys throughout a season, and trying to get them regrouped for another big home game tomorrow night?
Yeah, we need to focus on ourselves, and we need to, understand that we're able to grow from this. We're going to lose hockey games. Everyone's going to lose hockey games. No one's going 68-0. So it's not fun to lose back-to-back, but we got a chance to get back on the horse tomorrow, and with a good effort against a good team, that can really build some momentum for us going forward. So, you know what? It is what it is. You lose hockey games, but how do you bounce back? How do you fight back? Are you resilient? And, we got a group in there that I think is ready to prove a lot of people wrong. And, they can pile on us right now because we're down. We're going to get bonded in there. We're going to get tight. We're going to come back and fight harder.
Couple of firsts tonight. Juan Copeland gets his first goal of the season after missing that Michigan road trip, which I know was hard for him going back home, not being able to play. Just talk about him getting back in the lineup and being able to contribute tonight.
Yeah, he had a bit of pop today, which was great. That's a great goal. He had a couple other chances as well. Juan is somebody that we expect to continue to grow his game. So to see him score and be rewarded for that is fantastic.
And getting Pano back in the lineup, I know he played last night as well, scored tonight. Do you feel like he's starting to come around? Obviously, he only played 5 minutes in the first 3 games of the season, and trying to get his feet back under him. Can you see kind of some progression in Pano's game here as he's starting to finally play full games?
Yeah, for sure. Last night wasn't his best. I think he would admit that, but he did show a lot of good things. Today he was far more comfortable and played with a lot more pace and more assertive in his attack. I thought he played off his line mates a lot better today. So, it's something to build on for him. We know that he's a threat on our lineup, and other teams are circling him. He's going to get tough matchups. He's got to find a way to fight through that. I thought he did a good job of that tonight.
And lastly, the captain, Landon Cato, did not come out for the third period. Do you have any update on his status at this point, or is it too early to kind of diagnose?
Yeah, too early to diagnose, but hopefully it's not too long.
Kyle, good thoughts from the coach. And
Fitzy.
well, we'll get to the latter part in that first, but what were your thoughts on just him, talking about the team's got to reset here, but they're not going to have, the sky's not falling here in Niagara yet. They've still got a long season, and they have to keep
the key.
They have to keep their morale up for the next 62 games, or else, they're just going to crumble.
Yep, that's the key thing is, there's 82 more games, everybody.
62.
62, sorry.
Getting it mixed up with the NHL start.
Yeah, sorry. I was looking at my fantasy team during the break, but it's the coach still had positive takes out of the team, even with that hard loss, showing his positive takes from Pano-Fimis. I think Pano-Fimis is getting his feet. It's going to take a little bit longer to get his feet, but he had a little bit rough go in the beginning of the season, kind of with that suspension. So he's off to a shaky start. I think he's played what?
He's only played this week because he only played 5 minutes in week 1.
That's right. Yeah, and he missed the road trip. So
he was a little bit rusty at the beginning, but I think he's starting to get going again a little bit, and we should expect Pano to really pick things up here moving forward.
Yeah, I think he's. I know that Sarazotti, Michaud, and Castle have really kind of, and even Zito, Castle, Sarazotti, Michaud really have taken the team by the horns here at leading the way with scoring. But I think Pano-Fimis is right there, and he's about to break through. I can see it with him in his game. He's got a lot. He's got good high hockey IQ out there. That's the one thing I pick out of him. I know he can do a lot better offensively, but his hockey IQ out there is beyond a lot of the other players that they're facing. So I think eventually he's gonna work his way into a groove here, and I know it's coming. So besides that, again, coach reiterating, we're not letting these the losses affect us, right? We're going to move on. There's more games to play. You don't sit there and think about the losses, right? If there's more games ahead, you think about those games. You leave those games in the past. You've lost. It's already gone. It's happened. You move on and try to get better from those games. So it's exactly what coach said. And, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to what they've been doing in practice after these. I know that one was after the 1 loss, but after these 3 losses, I'm sure that there's a big bag skate after the third one, and some work during the week on how they can improve during those losses. So probably a lot of tape watching, a lot of on ice stuff. So I can't wait for this Saturday's game to see how they bounce back.
Yeah, and it's still growing pains, guys. Again, this is a new team. They've got half a new roster. It's going to happen. You know, they weren't expected to even they had no expectations going into this season. They start off 2-0-1, and everybody's saying, "Oh, this IceDog team's going to win the OHL Cup," and then they lose 3 games, and all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden they're the worst team in the league. But that's how like the emotions go. They go like these people they go from high to complete low, and there's no in between. And you know, guys, we have to kind of level ourselves and just take a step back and realize that this is going to happen. The highs and the lows of the season, we're going to have to take
do it with
both
me.
of them.
Breathe in, then breathe out. If you guys want, hit me up on Twitter. We'll do some breathing exercises. Do what we got to do just to calm down. I'll walk you guys through it. I'll find a YouTube video. We'll do it together.
Even though Jake Uberti isn't here anymore to do his yoga, but
I'll call up Jake. Maybe Jake can come down and we can do some yoga sessions together. Some nice calming yoga sessions, because I think a lot of you guys out there need to take one of those chill pills. Take it at night before you go to bed.
Yeah, and again, we'll talk about the trades because that got people fired up. We'll talk about the Twitter polls and just kind of look towards this week, and we'll talk about the new kids club as well. But before we do that, we're going to get to our interview with the play-by-play voice of the Oshawa Generals, Jack Moore, as he discusses with us kind of a preview of what to expect from the Oshawa Generals, which, you know, again, on this show, we want to promote the IceDogs, but we also want to talk about the other teams as well, especially, you know, the former IceDogs, Cam Butler, Dylan Rubrick, and Leighton Moore, all had great games on Friday night, and Jack will discuss with me about them moving forward. So stay right here on the Dog Pound Podcast, and back after our interview with Jack Moore of the Oshawa Generals. Pleased to be joined now on the pregame by the full-time play-by-play voice on the radio for the Oshawa Generals, Jack Moore. Jack, thanks a lot for doing this today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Jack, let's talk about the Oshawa Generals. An interesting team coming into this year. People in Niagara know they've got some former IceDogs. Leighton Moore is now the captain of this team that was traded in the Jack Studnicka trade. Feels like forever ago. Feels like Leighton Moore's been in the league, you know, for 5 or 7 years, even though he hasn't. But what have you seen in his development over the last couple of years, and really wanting the Generals to make him captain this year?
Yeah, I think last year we really saw a big step from Leighton. He became that number 1 defenseman for Oshawa and really grew into that role. And he had a big part in the leadership of the team last year. He was an assistant captain. He was really close with the captain, Ty Tullio, and I think a lot of that helped him get that role into this year. But just, you know, I think he came into this league and he had a lot of offensive potential, but he wanted to focus on being a defensive player. And then as he got more and more solid and more comfortable on the back end, it really allowed him to develop on the front end. And now through 3 games, we see him with 5 assists already. He was 1 shy of 50 assists this season ago. He just makes things happen on both ends of the ice. He quarterbacks the power play. And really, he's the guy that the offense operates through, and he's going to be a guy who creates it. And that just presents such a unique challenge. Obviously, you see Cale Makar does that in the NHL, but there's not too many defensemen who are able to do that. And there's not too many defensemen in the Ontario Hockey League that can do that. The only other guy I can think of is Pavel Minchikov in Saginaw. But other than that, you know, Leighton's just one of those anomaly defensemen here in this league, and it's great to see him develop and grow up in his time in Oshawa, and now to become the leader of this team and this organization and be the face of it is a really good step for him. And you know, he got an opportunity to go to rookie camp with the Leafs and then with the Coyotes, and now he's just looking to prove to people like, hey, I deserve a pro shot because, you know, my size doesn't determine who I am as a player.
I was going to say that. He's not the biggest player out there, but do teams kind of try to go after him because he's a little bit smaller of a defenseman, or is he just so shifty and so smart that he's kind of able to get around teams trying to play more physical game on him?
Well, and that's the difficult part. You throw some bigger bodies out there and you try and get him off kilter because you're trying to hit him and he can beat you with speed. And then you try and put a guy on who might be able to match his foot speed, but you know, at 5'8", 180 pounds, he can still lay the boom on guys, and it's not something he's afraid to do either. We've seen it a number of times where he's fine playing a physical game. He's fine getting in the scrums. He's a gritty player. Like he's not he's not just what his size says he is. You look at a piece of paper, and again, the numbers say what the numbers say, but you watch him play, and he does, when he skates with the puck, when he hits people, when he skates and breaks up 2-on-1s, he doesn't look like he's 5'8". He plays like he's 6'2", and that's really important. And again, that goes back to the anomaly conversation where there's not a lot of guys that can do that, and he's not afraid to say, hey, my size isn't going to be the only determining factor of how I play this game. And he's one of the most well-rounded defensemen in this league, and it's just really difficult for teams to put him off kilter because, you know, he gets a lot of his points on the power play when you're down a man. So if you open him up, or if you go to him, you're leaving Callum Ritchie open, or you're leaving Stuart Roloffs open, or Dylan Rubrick or Cameron Butler, guys that you're familiar with, and all those guys can beat you too. So I think it's really tough to game plan when you have a guy like Leighton out there because he can just do it all.
Former first-round pick of the Niagara IceDogs, Leighton Moore. Great to see that he's still developing as a young man. Jack Moore joins us on the Dog Pound podcast pregame. Jack, you mentioned quickly Dylan Rubrick and Cam Butler. Those are two former IceDogs. Rubrick, since he's come over, hey, he's been on fire. He's a big body that really just didn't develop the way that Niagara kind of wanted him to. He's going to be playing a bigger role with Oshawa. I think that's what he wants. And then Cam Butler as well. He was the former captain of the IceDogs. He goes over to Oshawa, has a cup of coffee there last year, really gets engraved into their system. And look, he's looking for a big year in his last year in the Ontario Hockey League. So what are you looking for from Rubrick and Butler this year as catalysts for the Oshawa Generals?
I think the first thing that struck me with Dylan Rubrick this year, and obviously Oshawa and Niagara played a few times last year, so I got a little bit familiar. And then as the draft process started to come around, and his brother Ryan's going to be projected to be the number 1 pick in the 2023 OHL draft, I got more and more familiar with him, and he was 6'3" last year, and without skates on, he's 6'7" now. He's 17 years old. He's still growing, and he's huge, and he uses that big length of his to be able to snap the puck, and just has one of the most natural hard shots I've seen in a while from a 17-year-old, and it's really, really impressive what he's able to do in terms of shooting the puck. But he gets an opportunity to play with Callum Ritchie, who's projected to be a top 5, top 10 pick in the NHL draft this coming year. So it's giving him a chance to play at an elevated level. And then he also plays alongside that Cameron Butler, who's the overager, and I think there's a little bit of disappointment from Generals fans when he came over. There was expectations that he was going to play in the top 6 and be a driving force of that team going into the playoffs, and it didn't happen. But, he's so dynamic and all the skill that he has. They had a tough choice this year on who was going to be that last OA, and obviously they trade away David Jesus, and they go with one OA on the back end, so it's between Dawson McKinney and Cameron Butler on the front end, and it ends up being Cameron Butler just because he's able to create that offense, and I think a coaching change is a good thing for him because I think Derek Laxdal is going to be the guy who's going to get the most out of him, and we've seen that through the first couple of games here that he creates offense. I mean, Rubrick scored a goal against Barrie, and the assist went to Leighton Moore and Thomas Stewart. But that was generated because it was all Cameron Butler and Callum Ritchie in the offensive zone. They were just 4 and 5 that touch the puck, so they don't get assists. But he really keeps pace with Callum out there, and he does a phenomenal job of moving the puck around and having a little bit of comfort with Rubrick, and then playing with Ritchie a bit last year. That line can be explosive.
You mentioned Callum Ritchie. Looks like he's projected, like you said, a top 5, maybe fringe top 10 pick in the NHL draft. Do you really see him and maybe even Brett Harrison, who's still away at Boston Bruins camp? Do you think there's a possibility that he comes back and those are the two guys that kind of lead this group this year in the forward?
Yeah, so Brett is back with the team. He's nursing a lower body injury that he got at camp, but Boston thought it was better for him to do that in Oshawa and be with his team. So the hope was that he was going to be starting to skate this week to this weekend. He'll probably be a long shot to play next weekend, but the week after I would look for him to play for the Generals and really take a big step this year. Listen, another guy who you look at, and he'll be the first one to say that last year wasn't his best. And he put up good points. He was about a point per game player last season, but he wants to step up and be the driving force like Ty Tullio was last year. And I think that's where he sees himself, and that just didn't happen. And last year he started with an injury, but I think this year he's going to insert himself back into that top 6. He's going to have guys who are comfortable with each other already, and I think he's going to be a big piece. Obviously, right now he's not wearing a letter on his chest, but he is a big part of that leadership group. And then with Callum Ritchie, this is a guy, honestly, you just have to have him be comfortable. You tell him, hey, what are you comfortable doing? What do you see out there? Because he just thinks the game so differently than a lot of guys in this league. And ultimately, that's what makes kids different. Everybody can skate. Everybody can shoot. How do you think the game? And Callum just thinks that it's such a higher level. And he just has this skill set that is kind of unmatched for kids his age. And I think he's ready to take that step. But I really think Oshawa has the best head coach in place for Callum going into this year, where there are expectations, and how do you manage those expectations? Just take it a game at a time. Don't listen to the outside noise, and really just focus on playing your game, because at the end of the day, if you play your game to the best of your ability, he's going to end up being a top 5 pick and make an NHL team very, very happy in April.
Absolutely, and he was actually given some love on the OHL preseason media poll for some votes for and some percentage for the most outstanding player in the Ontario Hockey League this year. So a lot of people, like you mentioned, Jack, are high on Callum Ritchie. You mentioned losing David Jesus on the back end. He's now here in Niagara. He's fitting in nicely as a top 4 defenseman, can move the puck up the ice, and a big, strong defenseman. So who are kind of some of the guys that are flying under the radar that you're really looking to take another step with the Generals this year to kind of fill the spot? You lose Ty Tullio, and you lose David Jesus on the back end. So who are some of the guys that people can look forward to that aren't getting the household names right now, but by the end of the year they'll be known for Generals fans?
Yeah, I think the first guy is Beckett Seneca, the 8th overall pick in last year's draft. He's really put himself on the scene early. 3 games, he has a goal and an assist. Scored the first goal of the season for the Oshawa Generals in Barrie last Thursday. I think he's going to take a big step. I think he has a lot of potential, a lot of high-end skill there. And then when it comes to the back end, I look at Luca Morelli and Nikita Parfenyak. Like, that's a defensive pair that I don't think a lot of people outside Gens fans and people who cover the team are very aware of. But Nikita Parfenyak is a big body Belarusian who was at the World Junior Division II Championships last year, and he was a driving force. He was their number 1 defenseman. He broke his wrist against Barrie last season and put him out for 6 weeks. And that's kind of why nobody really knows who he is. But he's a big-body defenseman, real good on the back end. And then Luca Morelli is a 17-year-old who is really dynamic offensively, and the hope is he can be what Leighton Moore is now in a couple years. But just playing on that third pairing, a little bit in and out of the lineup. And unfortunately, last year he lost his mom. And after she passed away, you really found this respect of him because he brought it every night. But this is a kid who relatively, when you watched him on the ice, seemed unfazed by it, and he was still managed to be one of the top academic players on the team. So I think he battled through a lot last year, didn't go the way that he wanted it to, and obviously things in his personal life didn't go the way that he wanted it to, but I think he's ready to take a step and be a top 4 defenseman on this team. And then, you round it out with Bedkowski and Danford and Smith as the other 3 defensemen on this team, and there's a strong rotation. But I think Luca Morelli is the guy who's really going to step up and really impress a lot of people this season.
And the guys that they're playing in front of, Patrick Lever and Carter Bickle, what are you expecting from the goaltending this year for the Generals? And do you think, we've talked about some of the dynamic up front and on the defensive side of things, do you think that they'll be able to kind of hold up when Oshawa kind of tries to pinch a little bit and try to play a little bit more offensively? Do you see these two guys being able to hold down the fort in the net?
Yeah, I think coming into the season, there was a lot of questions surrounding Oshawa. Nobody really knew what they were going to be, and we still don't know what they're going to be. They're a project. They're a young team who's trying to get some experience, but they're going to play hard. They're going to play physical. But the one thing that everybody knew is that a 19-year-old in Patrick Lever is going to be a top 5 goalie in this league. Really a skill that's unmatched. He came in last year, and he was just supposed to back up Zachary Papatsakis, but Papatsakis gets injured at training camp and, has a slow start to the year, so Patrick Lever gets put in. He impresses. He plays in 49 games. He's 5th in the league in save percentage. This is a guy who saw a lot of minutes last season. He's going to see a lot of minutes this season. And, he might have off nights. Everybody does. I have off nights. Everybody has bad days at work. But Patrick Lever, for the most part, is going to dominate in terms of goaltending stats this year in this league. And I think the team has no issues when things go wrong in terms of breakdowns in the middle of the ice, that Patrick Lever is going to be there to bail him out. It happened on Sunday against Kingston in the win. He robbed Owen Outwater twice in the first period. So Patrick Lever's not a question mark. And then Carter Bickle, he was the third goalie last year. He's going to play a little bit, but I think Patrick Lever's going to get a lot of the playing time here for the Oshawa Generals this season. But in his time in the OJHL, he played very well for a bad Mississauga team. So I think that experience as a young goaltender really helped him. But I think, when they turn to him and he gets a chance to play, he's going to prove people that he belongs at this level. But it might be a little more tough for him to get into games because I think a lot of the workload is going to go to Patrick Lever, and this team's going to be what Patrick Lever allows them to be this season.
Yeah, the Oshawa Generals, we'll see what they are this year. They've got some very nice, exciting players. Amazing analysis today from the full-time radio play-by-play announcer for the Oshawa Generals, Jack Moore. Thanks so much for doing this, Jack, and best of luck this season.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Oh God, we're back.
Okay.
We're back. We're back.
Thank you to the captain, Landon Cato. We'll talk about him a little bit later in the segment here. But yes, thank you to Jack Moore for taking the time and talking with us about the Oshawa Generals. Great to talk with him, now the full-time voice of the Oshawa Generals. So congratulations to him with that. And with that said, Kyle, guys, we're going to talk about the Twitter polls, but I want you guys to promise me one thing. Go and follow Dog Pound Podcast on Twitter.
I thought we were going somewhere else with that.
No. Go and follow us at Dog Pound Podcast. It's where all of our Twitter polls are going to be, and all of our exclusive IceDogs content will be on there. Again, it's the number one social media that we'll be using. And, make sure that you're staying up to date with all of our content, whether that be on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and make sure you're hitting that bell icon, smashing that subscribe button, and giving us a like. Give us some love for the YouTube version of the episode.
We got some cool content on the way, guys. Look at this thing. You guys are watching YouTube version. Look at this thing. I got us this little doohickey device here that we're going to use for filming. If you guys are listening to the audio, you're going to have to come over to YouTube. While you're here, hit that like button just like he said. And subscribe.
Good.
Yeah, look at this thing.
Good plug.
This thing is a fancy gadget we're going to use for filming. Can't wait to use it.
Yep. We got some filming coming up. We've got some dates scheduled for later in the month. We don't want to spoil too much about it, but we're going to be doing some interesting rapid fire stuff down in the arena. So stay tuned for that.
He's going to be asking me questions.
Sure. I would. You might be involved in a couple of them, but I don't.
Or maybe our buddy John. John Morgan Burns has a lot to say.
Yeah. And
Shouts to John.
And Jake Ventresca too.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Jakey.
He can be the
Fan of
first
the
one
show.
interviewed. Fan of the show, yeah. So, guys, we put up some Twitter polls from this past week. Again, an 0-3 week. What was your positive takeaway from the week? Pano Femus being back in the lineup, Juan Copeland's 2-goal weekend, or Rodwin Denicio scoring his third goal already this season through 2 weeks, and Juan Copeland's 2-goal weekend winning with 42.9%. Shout-outs to Juan Copeland, fan of the show. And again, I think some of these trades that we'll talk about, especially the Matthew Pappas one, I'm looking at Juan Copeland and saying that he's really pushed through and earned himself some more ice time with how he's played in this last week.
Yeah, I think if there's a guy, there's two guys that can compete for his spot. If we're going for that top spot, you know what? To me, I'm keeping Misho, Sirzadi, and Castle together. I think that's your power line that you roll with. I know I'm not coach, right? You know what I mean? Like, coach can do what he has to do, and he can move those people around. But if you're gonna create a line, I liked, or actually it was Castle. Was it Castle, Femus, and he? I believe it was in that last game we saw. They look really, really good together. So maybe keep those together, and then do a Zito combination with Juan Copeland and maybe Sarazati. And it's Juan Copeland, I think, does deserve to be in that top six, but again, at the end of the day, even if he's not, it's not really a demotion because he's thriving in his bottom six role currently right now. The IceDogs have such a very big, well-built team with a lot of people that can be in the top six that they have too many of those. So which is a good thing. So you have players that can slot in the bottom, and if need to, the coach can slot them into the top six throughout the game. the next game, you know what I mean? You have players that can move up and down the lineup, which is great to see. And Juan Copeland is obviously one of those guys that can for sure move up and down the lineup. I hope that his performance does warrant him at least to get some top 6 time, because I think he's really looked good this year. Even coming out of camp, he's looked a lot better than he did last year. So here's hoping for Juan Copeland. I know it was a shame that he couldn't play in that road trip, going to his hometown, but yeah, he's looked really well.
Yeah, and he had a strong second half of the season, and we know he can shoot the puck, and finding that consistency, I think he's really starting to hit his stride now with that 2-goal weekend, and earning himself some more ice time with the Papastrek, we'll get into. But Pano Fimis being back in the lineup is also a plus, and Robin Dionisio, not to be forgotten, 3 goals so far from the back end.
As a defenseman too, right?
From the back end is very good so far. So good stuff for Rodwin, and he'll probably be going to Team Swiss again for the World Juniors, so the Ice Dogs will probably be missing him for a little bit as well. So maybe that's why they went and acquired another defenseman, but I'll get into that in a little bit. So second Twitter poll of the week: which area do you feel that the Ice Dogs need most improvement through 6 games? Even strength offense, even strength defense, power play setup, or penalty kill structure? The winner was, but the consensus was even strength defense, 51.6%. Yeah, they did give up a lot of goals this week, 16 in the 3 games, Kyle. So are you really shocked that that was kind of the consensus?
No, that's the one I would have voted on, because that was, I think, the area that the Ice Dogs lacked in. I think also like breakouts. They really weren't breaking out properly. There was almost a lot of like stretch passes that weren't connecting, and they were giving the puck away a lot. But defensively, yeah, they were kind of a tire fire sometimes back there. And they really need to really, I think it's positionally, defensively, they need to get a little bit better at, because there are a lot of times where the teams were just cycling around them full strength and without any
they were puck chasing.
Yeah, they're basically, yeah, like you said, they're caught puck chasing. But I think I would have voted on that one. That their defensive play, it needs to be tightened up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's still good. It just needs to be tighter. They're letting a lot slip by that they can definitely do better on. And I know the defensemen that are there that can do better than that. So it is a shame though, because the defensive end has been, I think, the most movement since the beginning of the year. If you look at the first game till now, there's been the most movement on the defensive end with injuries, suspensions, and trades. The back end has been flip flop so much. So, and now with Landon Cato injured, and like you said, Dionisio for sure will be missing some time come December when World Junior camps start. You're missing some key pieces there. We don't know, I don't think, with the full details with Landon Cato and how long he's going to be out for. He did re-injure his shoulder again. I believe it was in the was it the Oshawa game?
Yeah, he didn't come out for the third period.
Yeah, so that's a big hurt. Not only is he the captain of the team, he's one of the veterans on the team and a big piece of their decor. So you have a lot of players having to step up. David Jesus has done a really good role in stepping up, like Rodwin as well. Rodwin's looked fantastic for the Ice Dogs. The new one, the LeBlanc, one of the LeBlanc twins. I believe it's. I keep getting them mixed up on the back end.
I think it's
Jacob. Jacob LeBlanc is a defenseman. Yeah, him trying to get adjusted right. He has 2 points. But him getting adjusted and learning, the defensive chemistry with the players. You have Van Netten, who's new. He's a rookie, right? This is his first year in the OHL, I believe. I think. I could be wrong. But I believe it's his first year at the Ice Dogs. It's tough. Nathan Rebos looked great. I mean, Rebos looked great on the back end in the defensive zone. Like, he's very aggressive. He's on the puck, and he's brought, like, his physical game is what sticks out the most with him. And I think David Jesus is also taking the lead too as well, with leading this team defensively in the offensive zone, coming out with 3 points so far this season, 1 goal and 2 assists. But defensively, structure wise, they need to tighten it up a little bit.
And we haven't seen Andrew Wysick, who had a great camp and a great preseason, and he's been out. So we haven't really got to see Andrew Wysick in the lineup yet in the regular season. So looked.
That's true as well.
Yeah. Hopefully he'll be back this week. I think Coach did say that he had a chance to play last weekend, but they kind of kept him out for precautionary. So he should be good to go for Saturday.
Well, he should be playing because we lost a defenseman in a trade. So
yeah, we'll get into
there's
that
an
in a
open
minute.
spot there.
And then, so for the Twitter, I would have went even strength offense just for the fact that they really couldn't enter the zone. Guelph was really doing a good job at trapping them at the offensive blue line. And, they really couldn't get anything going even strength either way. So even strength defense was the winner at 51.6, and then even strength offense was at 22.6.
Yeah. They could just tighten it a little bit more. It's not great, but it's also not the worst I've ever seen. So they can just tighten it up a little bit.
In the last poll, which of the three games showed the most promise despite the end result? The 5-2 loss to Barrie, the 6-3 loss to Oshawa, or the 5-2 loss to Guelph? And the 5-2 loss to Guelph won handily 55.2%. So obviously with Guelph being a top team projected in all of the CHL, I guess the fans thought that there were some positives to take away from one of these losses, and the most were from the Guelph game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Oshawa game was mostly a wash, in my opinion.
And the Barrie game, was pretty rough.
Yeah.
But again, I think they did play a little bit better in that Guelph game, but just didn't get the
Barrie
result.
game was just confusing. It was just very confusing.
So that's it for the Twitter polls, guys. Thank you very much to everybody that voted. Again, you can have your opinions heard every week on our show. You can even comment as well if you want to. Have some constructive thoughts on the team. We can read them out for you guys on the show and go over the Twitter polls. So thank you very much to everybody for participating in that, even when it was a rough week. So with that said, guys, we've been talking about it all show, but we'll finish off here with the trades. Kyle, this team continues to make a lot of trades and continues to kind of take over the spotlight here in the Ontario Hockey League. And I wanted to pull up a quick tweet here while we're on the air, because I liked it so that I could pull it back up. But it was where is it? I'm looking at it right now. The Niagara IceDogs trade tally is up to 19 since June 30th. There have been 48 trades in the OHL during that span. That means the 39.5% of the trades in the Ontario Hockey League involved the Niagara IceDogs. That was from Mike Stubbs, the voice of the London Knights. So I'm sure he was taking a jab there, but it is what it is. But again, Kyle, they make two more trades. Yes, I'm sure Landon Cato and his status might have played into this. You can also look at Juan Copeland playing better, which is why they went on to move Matthew Pappas. But they moved Matthew Pappas for a 5th-round pick, which, again, people have been crucifying them for the fact that they gave up a 3rd and a 4th in the offseason to bring in Matthew Pappas. He led the team in scoring in the preseason. He's only had 1 point in the 6 games in the regular season so far. But, again, he was an overager after because, again, you can only have 3
just
overagers.
Because we traded away a 3rd and a 4th for him doesn't mean other teams are going that they're going to be like, okay, so we'll give you a 3rd and 4th for him or something higher. No, teams are going to try to, not pay as high for him. Like that's not how it works.
And especially
if you're you're a GM at another team and you're sitting there watching like me acquiring this kid for a 3rd and a 4th. I'm like, okay, no, he's worth at least a 3rd and a 4th or higher. You're like, no, we'll give you a 5th or something lower.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay that. Like you're a competing team. You're not sharing organizations here.
Yeah, it's like me ripping you off in a fantasy hockey trade, but that's a discussion for another day. But no, obviously other teams are not going to pay what Niagara paid, and knowing that with them acquiring another overage player that they could only have 3 on the roster after a certain amount of time, so their hands were tied with that. So they had to get what they could for Matthew Pappas, and maybe it just wasn't a good fit. Maybe it was something that we don't know about that could have happened. We're not saying it did or it didn't, but you never know. Chemistry with guys, you never know what's going to happen, especially when you have this many new players in here.
Yeah.
You don't know who's going to gel with who. Maybe it just didn't work, or maybe, like I keep mentioning, maybe Juan Copeland really worked his way into earning more ice time with this team, and they had to address the issues on the back end because they didn't keep as many defensemen as maybe people thought that they should after training camp, letting go of like Lucas Littlejohn and Sammy Douglas Najum and guys like that to kind of have some depth on the defense. But they go out and get LeBlanc. They've got Van Netten. They're getting Wysick back. And then you go out and you trade Alec Leonard for an overage defenseman from the London Knights. So the second trade that they've made with London here, Jared Keane comes over from the London Knights in exchange for Alec Leonard and a second-round pick and a third-round pick. So they get an overage defenseman in Keane. He played with the London Knights for his entire career and had 38 points in 64 games from the back end, and actually had 4 points in the 7 playoff games for the London Knights. So it looks like the IceDogs are trying to gain some stability on the back end with Landon Cato being out of the lineup and preparing for Rodwin Denizio to be gone as well. So again, Kyle, steep price to pay. Alec Leonard was a second-round pick of this team in the same draft as Pano Femus, and you give up a second and a third-round pick as well with a guy that still has a couple more years left in the OHL. And they get an overager. Again, there's pros and cons, I think, with this move, but general thoughts on both trades, I guess.
I mean, the Pappas trade was, I think that shocked me the most, just because he showed some signs of promise. But it is what it is. I mean, it's the OHL. Like, people get all bent out of shape with these trades, and like this happens. And again, I said it in the beginning of the show. It's like people act like it's the IceDogs the only ones making trades here. Like I'm seeing other teams make trades. Yeah, they haven't made the same amount of trades, but like this GM, it's a new GM, it's a new management. What if they? I mean, I don't know. Like, what if they wanted to build the team? They want to build the team their way. It's their decision at the end of the day. They're not going to ask fans who they want to keep and who to trade away. That's not how it works. It's just, it's just got to roll with it. I mean, Matthew Pappas is going to go to Owen Sound, right? Maybe that, like you said, maybe Juan Copeland's impressed so much that they need to make a spot open on the top 6 for him, right? And what would you rather do? Move Matthew Pappas to the 4th line? He's not going to thrive on the 4th line. He's probably not wanting to play in the 4th line. So the next option was to move him. And that's basically probably what happened at the end of the day with him. And he's an overager, so that happens all the time as well in the OHL. Or overagers move like crazy during their overage year. And it is what it is, and that happens.
And you only have 3 on your team.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. So and then now they went and acquired an overage defenseman. This, like you said, most likely has ties into what's going on with Landon Cato, with a potentially injury he could be out longer for. We don't really know right now, but Alec Leonard, I know he was young, he still had years to develop, but at the same time, I don't know. I think he didn't really have a strong start of the season. Training camp, I really didn't really notice him a lot. So, if there was a defenseman they need to move on from to make room, it was ultimately going to be him in the end. Or I felt like it might have been Wysick, and I'm kind of happy they didn't trade Wysick. I'm glad that he's still on the team and now gets an opportunity. Maybe the coach and management saw what we saw out of him in training camp, and he looked very promising in training camp. I think he had a fantastic training camp because he looked like he did grow for one, but he grew in skill wise over the offseason going into this year. So now he's going to get that opportunity to play, hopefully. And then now we get, Jared Keane from the London Knights, who is an overager. He's played 148 regular season OHL games. He's a big body defenseman, 6 feet, 185 pounds. He's got a total, he had put up 10 goals and 28 assists with a total of 38 points. I think that was last season. Yeah, last season in 64 games, which is good for a defenseman. And he was also named this year to the Arizona Coyotes rookie tournament roster. So, he was a player that was looked at by an NHL team and got invited to a rookie tournament. So, we're getting a pretty decent defenseman back there that's going to help this team a little bit.
A veteran guy.
A veteran guy, and he's coming from a London Knights team that's been, a dominant team in the OHL the last couple of years. So I think this was a nice trade. Good for London. They're going to get Alec Leonard. Hopefully, wish him well in his future endeavors. But
him and Sam Dickinson.
Yeah.
Be interesting if they put them together for that game against the
IceDogs. That's probably what we're going to see, to be honest. But
no, I like the Keane addition, especially if you're going to be losing Cato for an extended period of time and Denizio. Those are 2 of your veteran defensemen that you're losing, and having a stable guy like Keane back there, I think is going to be big for the IceDogs decor because they've got some new guys, some younger guys in there, and I just think where they're at right now, I think Keane was a guy like him was more valuable than having Alec Leonard in the lineup, who's still a younger player, only going into his second year here. I think they needed some true stability back there, and that's why they went and made this move.
Yeah, I'm perfectly okay with it. At the end of the day, again, I said before in this show before, I'm gonna sound like a broken record. I'm gonna wake up tomorrow. I'm gonna turn on my Keurig, put my K-cup in there. I'm gonna close the lid. I'm gonna select big cup because I like my coffees in the big cup. I'm gonna get it, put my coffee creamer in there. I'm gonna sit down at this desk, get ready for my day job, and guess what, guys? I'm gonna take a nice big sip, and I'm not gonna be mad about the trade.
Let's see how it plays out first, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. We don't like these, like, people are making judgment calls this early. We don't know what's going to happen. Does everyone just have a crystal ball? I mean, Amazon Day was the other day, dude. Did they just, ship out a bunch of crystal balls to everyone, and now everyone knows how the end of the season's going to go? Is that what's happening now? Because I missed the boat on that. I didn't get my crystal ball. Just saying. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, hook me up, brother. I need that crystal ball, man. I need to see what these people are seeing, because clearly they know exactly how this is going to happen.
And again, we're not management. We're not coaching staff. We're not going to just sit here and say that, we know better than them without coming up with solutions. So, simple as that.
You move on. Yeah, tough 3 losses. Yeah, it happens. It's hockey. What people act like it's over. Burn down the Meridian Center. It's over, guys. No more team.
Nope. We don't have a game on Saturday upcoming or nothing.
Again,
people.
Where were you guys last year? Did you not see what happened? Were you guys just blind last year? You finally have eyes this year?
Or the second half of the year before that, after they traded away everybody and knew they were going to go through a rebuild and go through tough times. So, again,
mind-boggling.
People just got to take a step back, relax. We'll get through this, okay? We'll get through it together. We'll hold hands.
We'll hold your hand, yeah.
Okay? We'll look forward to this game against Flint on Saturday. Yeah, Brennan Othman is a very dangerous player, but the IceDogs did get the better of them in the first week. I'm assuming that Flint will be coming and looking for redemption here with their only trip to the Meridian Center this year.
Hey, Brandon, here's a little perspective for everybody. Just really quickly before we move on here. The last six games of the IceDogs regular season last year were all losses. One of those games, they lost 10-5 to Kingston. They lost 6-3 to Sudbury, 5-1 to Peterborough, 6-3 to Barrie, 4-1 to Hamilton. Hamilton beat us all year last year, but yeah, we lost 6 times in the last 6 games of the year. One was 10-5, and y'all are worried about the first 3 games in a row of the season. Guys, there's 62 more games. 62.
I feel like that's like the theme.
We're all going to be okay.
That's like the theme of today's show. 62 games.
Yeah.
And again, we've
just called the episode 62 games.
We've gone we've gone a lot longer than expected today, but we had that interview with Jack Moore. So we'll quickly wrap up with the Kids Club announcement, Kyle. I think this is great. Bones IceDogs Kids Club returns for another exciting
Bones!
season. Your $30 registration fee gets you 2022-23 Bones Junior IceDogs Club T-shirt.
Oh, it's a tie-dye T-shirt.
A team set of hockey cards from last year, which is cool.
Oh.
Got Daniil Gushin in it, so it's worth something. Presenting sponsor swag. Discounted offers to games throughout the regular and postseason. One free ticket to Junior IceDogs Kids Club game versus Barrie, and one free ticket to Junior Club game number 2, February 4th versus Kitchener. Family entry to free skate with the team on December 3rd at 11 a.m. Fill out your registration form below on the website and bring it to Lucy or Seth at the IceDogs office. Email or call to have your child registered.
Shout out Lucy. Shout out Seth.
I really think this is a great idea, Kyle. I think, having a kids club like this, I know Ted has brought this up many times, so shout out to Ted for trying to bring this back. But again, I think they need to try to entice more families and more younger children to want to come to a lot of these games, because we want the attendance to get back up to what we expect here in Niagara. And again, there's not going to be a sellout every single game, so I think doing stuff like this to try to increase ticket sales and just general interest on the team to get more kids, more families out and to make the place look more full. And again, we're not saying we're Mississauga here, but just giving some initiative and having these kids feel like they're a part of something, I think is really cool.
Now, are you gonna have candy for the kids at our table nights?
Oh, that's to be determined.
Is that still like PC?
Candy for the kids? I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Halloween, it's okay, but like every other night of the year, it's like, ooh.
Thoughts on the kids club, Kyle?
Oh, it's great. It's fantastic. I love it that they call the Bones IceDogs Kids Club. It's amazing. It's only $30, and you get a lot of benefits for $30, guys. You get so much in that package. If you have kids out there and you're a fan of the IceDogs, I highly suggest you take advantage of this. Forms are available right now on the IceDogs website. Go to it, IceDogs or NiagaraIceDogs.net. Click the article. It says IceDogs Kids Club is back. You'll get the link there to fill out. But this is great. And if I can make a suggestion for Bones, I don't know if this goes to the DJ. They probably don't listen to the show, but say it anyways. Why isn't he come out to Bad to the Bone again? Come on.
I don't know.
You have one job.
Brought to you by Silk's Country Kitchen.
Yeah.
Which we were there last weekend. Good stuff.
Oh, good stuff. If you guys haven't tried Silk's, shameless plug here. They're not paying us for this.
We're not even getting paid for this.
Pay us in wings if you hear this, Silk's.
Yeah.
Okay, next time we're in there. But
yeah.
Great chicken wings, great breakfast all day long. You can have it at 9 o'clock at night. You can have breakfast, and it's dynamite. Highly suggest you guys check it out in Niagara Lake.
And it's the official sponsor of Bones. I don't know if it still is or not, but it has been for the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's still on the flag. I would say yes, maybe.
So, Kyle, I think that's going to wrap it up. Final thoughts. Again, only one game this week, a shorter week, or kind of less volume of a week.
Yeah, we haven't had the game since last Saturday, and their next game now is this Saturday. And we don't play again until the following Thursday. So we played like 3 straight games, and it's like, oh no, we got a little bit of a hump. So like we play Flint, we're gonna rematch with Flint this Saturday. Then we play Erie next Thursday at home, and then me and you are off to the Sarnia-Windsor road trip the following weekend.
Woo! So we'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
And we'll look forward to providing some cool content, hopefully, for the road trip. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up a very long-winded episode here. We had to clarify some few things with the way that this week did, but the way this week went. But, thanks to Jack Moore from the Oshawa Generals for giving us a good interview there in the middle of the show. And, again, thank you to all of our sponsors. Or not of our sponsors, I meant our viewers for tuning in and listening along.
Who are future sponsors.
But make sure you guys are following us at Dog Pound Podcast. Stay up to date with all of our content. You've got the rose-colored glasses on. You're distracting me as I'm trying to do the outro here. But again, guys, for all things regarding the network, visit us at armchairgmsports.com. Follow us at Dog Pound Podcast or at armchairgmpod, and make sure you're following us on all other social media platforms, and make sure you're finding us on all audio platforms that you're listening to the podcast, and on YouTube, once again, for all video content. Big thank you to all of our great viewers and listeners, Ice Dog fans, for tuning in and listening along for another episode of the Dog Pound Podcast. For my co-host Kyle Lakett, my name is Brandon Caputo signing off for another installment of the Dog Pound Podcast right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, the official podcast of your Niagara Ice Dogs. As always, bark, bark, bark. Go Dogs, go. We'll talk to you guys again very soon. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.